Hello, dear friends. Today I want to discuss one of the most explosive recent reports, a publication in the respected British outlet Financial Times, which cites sources close to U.S.-Ukrainian negotiations. According to the journalist, the United States is tying the provision of long-term security guarantees to Ukraine to one key condition: the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from those parts of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions that remain under the control of Ukraine's legitimate government. Moreover, FT sources claim that Washington is prepared to significantly increase military aid to Ukraine, including deliveries of advanced weaponry to strengthen the army in peacetime, but only if Kiev agrees to this step. This position, the report says, has already been communicated to the Ukrainian side in recent contacts. Pay close attention. This demand almost verbatim repeats one of the main public conditions that Vladimir Putin and Kremlin officials have been putting forward throughout the entire war. Moscow has consistently stated that only the complete withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from the entire Donbas can serve as the basis for ending hostilities and signing any peace agreement. And now, according to the Financial Times, this very thesis is appearing in the American negotiating position. Naturally, this raises many questions. The most important one is control over the remaining territory of Donetsk Oblast, since Russia has already occupied nearly all of Luhansk Oblast, truly the sole and primary goal for which the Kremlin launched this bloody war. Let's think this through logically. Russia has been waging a full-scale invasion for over 4 years. It has annexed not only parts of Donbas, but also Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, held sham referendums there, and declared these territories subjects of its federation. Yet for some reason, it is precisely on Donbas that Moscow takes the hardest line, demanding complete withdrawal of Ukrainian troops, while speaking much more softly about Zaporizhia and Kherson in the context of freezing the conflict. There are several possible explanations, and unfortunately none of them support illusions about Putin's limited appetites. First, Donbas, especially Donetsk Oblast, has truly become a Ukrainian fortress. The cities and towns held by our defenders, Avdiivka, Vuhledar, Kurakove, Toretsk, Chasiv Yar, and many others, have been fortified over years of defense. The Russian army has repeatedly learned that storming these positions comes at an astronomical cost in lives and equipment. Thousands killed, months of failed assaults, massive losses of hardware. The Kremlin sees this every day. So it is entirely logical that Putin would prefer to take this region not through more meat grinder assaults, but diplomatically, by pressuring Ukraine and its partners, without fighting, without further losses, simply at the negotiating table. Second, and this may be even more important, Russia fully understands the political consequences such a move would have inside Ukraine. If Ukrainian leadership, under external pressure, agrees to withdraw troops from Donbas, it could trigger a serious internal crisis. One part of society would accuse the government of treason and capitulation. Another part would accuse it of prolonging the war and refusing peace. In either case, there is a risk of destabilization, protests, perhaps even political chaos. A very telling example here is Armenia in 2020. Then Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan signed a trilateral statement with Putin and Aliyev, under which Armenia effectively lost control of territories in Nagorno-Karabakh it had held since the 1990s. The result? Mass protests in Yerevan, storming of parliament and government buildings, attempts at physical attacks on politicians. Moscow watched closely and undoubtedly drew conclusions. The Kremlin would very much like to repeat a similar scenario in Ukraine, only on a much larger scale. Societal division, weakening of the government, possible collapse of the army. This is exactly what Putin dreams of when he talks about demands regarding Donbas, because the real goal is not so much square kilometers as full control over Ukraine, or its destruction as an independent state. Third, this position allows Russia to play a sophisticated propaganda game aimed primarily at the American audience and Donald Trump personally. If Ukraine refuses to withdraw troops, Moscow will immediately declare, "You see, it's not us, it's Kyiv that doesn't want peace." And it will try to convince Trump that Zelensky is taking a non-constructive stance by rejecting reasonable compromises. If Ukraine were hypothetically to agree, Russia would gain territory without fighting, while sowing chaos inside the country. In any scenario, the Kremlin wins, either territorial gains or a powerful propaganda blow against Ukrainian leadership and its international reputation. And here we come to the most painful question. Why, according to FT, is the Trump administration willing to support this very Russian thesis? Why is Washington not pressuring Putin to drop the Donbas demand, but instead shifting that demand onto the Ukrainian side? For many observers, especially those critical of Trump's policies, the answer is obvious. President Trump has repeatedly shown a desire to quickly close the Ukraine issue, preferably with a loud headline. "I ended the war that others couldn't." He often repeats that the war continues because of endless aid to Ukraine, and that it is enough to simply sit down at the table. But such simplistic logic ignores reality. The aggressor is Russia, not Ukraine, which is defending its own land. By supporting the Russian demand for Donbas as a compromise, the White House is effectively legitimizing the aggressor's position and placing the victim of aggression in the role of the guilty party. This is not the first time we have seen Trump lean toward Putin's arguments rather than facts and common sense. And it is especially disappointing for those who hoped the new U.S. administration would take a tougher stance toward the Kremlin. Friends, the main conclusion is simple. The demand regarding Donbas is not about the territory itself. It is about Russia's attempt to achieve strategic goals with minimal effort. Avoid heavy losses, sow discord in Ukraine, convince the world, and above all Trump, of its own peacefulness. We must clearly understand this, analyze every piece of news, not give in to emotions, and remember, true peace is possible only on the basis of justice, not capitulation. Thank you for your attention. If the video was useful, give it a like, leave comments, share your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new analyses. Always think critically. Check information from different sources. I will do my best to help you with that. Peace to all of us and victory to Ukraine. See you soon.